Hello guys, now the first step to learning how to use this software is going to be obviously to get our hands on a version of it. I would recommend using version 3 or later, as we can use version 2, but it's going to be a little more difficult to install the Kotlin support. So version 3 automatically comes with Kotlin installed. That's probably our best bet, plus we should be using the latest software anyway. So go ahead and open up a new browser. I'm using Chrome, and we're just going to search for Android Studio. Okay, we're going to follow this first link, download Android Studio and SDK tools. And I'm just going to click this big green button here. Okay, so obviously make sure you are reading through these terms and conditions. I know that all of you definitely will read through the whole thing. Once that's done, go ahead and check this box here, and we're going to go ahead and download that for Mac. Now keep in mind, I am of course doing this on a Mac rather than a PC or Linux, so you'll want to follow the instructions for your respective system. You can also see those instructions by clicking on the respective item here. Okay, so Android Studio works pretty much the same in all of the platforms, but the interface will look very slightly different as it usually does between stuff like PC and Macs. Okay, so I'm just going to pause this and wait for this to finish. I'll be right back. So for Macs, a lot of these programs are going to be downloaded as DMG files. We're just going to go ahead and open this up. If for whatever reason this window isn't appearing, then it should be located in your Downloads folder. And okay, there we go. And it should be this Android Studio DMG file. Okay. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and take this icon and drag it into our applications. Now I already have a version of Android Studio installed and actually a window running right now. So I'm not going to do this, but it will prompt you to enter a few pieces of information. One is going to be to import previous settings if you have them. This is only really applicable if you've used a version of Android Studio before. If you haven't, simply select no and then move on to the next couple of steps. They'll likely prompt you to install certain SDK tools. I would recommend using the SDK tools that would install API 26 and above. Throughout our tutorials, we're going to be using version 27. API 27 that is, but I'll show you how to download that stuff once you have Android Studio started up anyway. So if you download the wrong version, it's not such a big deal right now. So go ahead and do that, follow the rest of the instructions. There's a few steps here as well. And once that's done, we're going to go ahead and open up a new instance of Android Studio. So just go ahead and pause this until you have Android Studio started up and you can find this window. Okay, so I'm assuming that you have Android Studio started. On the left here is a list of previous projects that I've started. So some of these are Kotlin projects, some of them are Java projects as an equal mix. And on the right here provides a little bit of information, so it gives us the version we're running. We can start a new project, open an existing one, check one out from version control, so this is like GitHub, Bitbucket, etc. Profile or debug an APK, import a project from something else, or we can import an Android code sample. Now, we'll typically start by just starting a new Android Studio project, or obviously open one that's existing. But I would recommend at some point you do check out these Android code samples. They're really helpful for beginners because they show you how to implement certain tasks, and these are actually done by the Android developers themselves, so you know they're kind of the best possible code that you could write. Alright, so otherwise we're going to select a new Android Studio project. Typically we give this guy a name. Let's just call this something like Intro to Android. Okay, choose a good location to save this. I'm going to save it somewhere else, so just click on this button and we'll get a series of folders or a place to save it. You know what, I'll stick with the desktop for now, that's fine, I can move it around later. But you do want to make sure that you are saving it in its own directory, so good idea to create a separate directory to save it in. Now, we will want to include Kotlin support because we are focusing more on Kotlin than Java at this point. And feel free to enter something here. If you have a company, then simply enter that domain. If not, then just enter your name or something. Okay, so go ahead and click Next. Like I said, we're going to be using version 27, the API version 27 that is, but feel free to use any of the previous ones. I wouldn't recommend going earlier than 23, otherwise you'll run into device compatibility issues. So I'd recommend 26 or above. I'll stick with 27. I'm not going to bother with Wear TV, Auto, or Android things, as we'll be focusing mostly on Android applications for mobile devices. So we'll go ahead and click Next. Now there's a bunch of possible starting activities to choose from, and these just start off with various implementations. For example, if you know you're going to be building a Google Maps application, maybe you'll want to start with this already. If you want, let's say, a tabbed activity or something with navigation, draw, or maybe something with settings, good idea to start with those because they have, again, a bunch of stuff already set up for you. However, we'll be starting most of our apps as empty activities because we kind of want to have a fully customizable option. Okay, like I said, check them out at some point, but we'll go with an empty activity for now. Now this is just going to be the name of the initial activity. I'll explain what that means a little later on. Main activity is a good place to start unless you really want to call it something else. And then there'll be a layout, which is where we're going to define how the screen would look. Let's just stick with these basic names, main activity and activity main. We do want to generate a layout file, and sure, we'll select backwards compatibility. Go ahead and finish this up, and this will start creating our project for us. Now, depending on how fast your computer is being, this could take a couple of minutes or it could take a couple of seconds. So I'm just going to pause this until the project is fully loaded, and then we can resume. And at this point, our project has fully finished loading. So it shows us which file we currently have open, shows us the name of the project, where it is saved, and typically opens up a main activity file and then the corresponding layout file. So we'll explain exactly what these mean later, as well as give an intro to the whole interface as we go. But we're going to start covering that in the very next section. If you're feeling particularly adventurous, then what I would encourage you to do is kind of check out some of these items on the drop-down menus. I kind of auto hide my taskbar, which is why it's not showing all the time. But as long as you have Android Studio selected, then you get to choose from all of these guys. I'll explain the general theme behind each of these drop-down menus, as well as, again, the entire interface, what all these windows are for, in the next section or the next couple of sections, depending on how long it takes. But for now, I'm going to end it and give you guys a bit of a break. When you're ready, come on back and we'll explore Android Studio's interface.